Are about to be spoken here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you exclusively by Podcast Heat and AdFreeShows.com. I, of course, am John Alba, joined as I am every single week by the man of the hour, the woken one, the spoken one, and the broken one, Mr. Matt Hardy. Matt, what's up, man? Where are you coming to us from this week?
I am coming to you from the lovely Savannah, Georgia. Savannah's a really pretty cute little town. So I enjoy coming here. So it's nice to be here to work, actually, because Savannah is a good place to be if you're going to be anywhere.
It's been a busy weekend for Matt Hardy. Last night, as we record this, you finally had a chance to make your ad-free show's live debut. We did a live watch-along of SummerSlam 2000, the TLC match. We answered some questions from some top guys and top gals. I had an absolute blast. What do you think of it?
It was a lot of fun. I was very happy to make my ad-free show's debut, and it was really enjoyable. I love doing watch-alongs, and I love giving my insight, especially being in the moment if I am in the match, actually. So that was very enjoyable, and it was a great group of individuals that were there with us and had a lot of great questions.
They really did, and they got a lot of great questions for this week's episode, too, which is going to be about Hurricane Helms, Shane Helms, Gregory Helms, whatever you want to call him. He's got a myriad of names, but we're talking about him on this week's edition of The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy because rumor has it, Matt Hardy, he just celebrated a birthday this week.
I think that is true. He is older than me. He is my elder, so I'll be very respectful of him, even though it's by just a couple of months. And all I got to say, we're finally doing an episode on the hurricane. What's up with that?
What's up with that?
What's up with that?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
He's one of my all-time favorites from that era. I think one of the greatest and most underappreciated cruiserweights of the 90s and 2000s. And we're gonna have some great stories about him on this week's edition of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, and we're gonna do a very cool watch along at the end of this that is unlike any watch along we've ever done before on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm psyched. I'm psyched for this watch along.
That's gonna be very cool.
I do want to tell everybody first and foremost: stand back. There's a hurricane podcast coming through.
Yes, there is, and we're going to be hitting on that on this week's edition of The Extreme Life. But before we do, we like to catch you up on current events. And, of course, if you didn't get a chance to chat with Matt on last night's ad-free show's live event, you can get a chance to catch up with us at StarCast because Matt Hardy and I are closing StarCast down. We are in the main Matt Hardy leading up to Ric Flair's last match on July 31st, starcast.com. Go get your tickets. Matt and I are going to be doing a live panel, which will also be broadcast on Fight TV. I cannot wait for this. We're just a couple weeks away, man.
Yeah, man. I'm thrilled to be at StarCast, and actually considering we're going on last before Ric Flair's final match before that card. It's a great spot that we're in, and we're going to be talking once again about pro wrestling, me and all different promotions, and also we're going to be throwing some mental health and addiction issues in there. Talking about issues that really hit home now, especially since the world and society and civilization has just come through this pandemic. We're still in it, obviously, but just coming through that, there has been so many issues with mental health and addiction. It's great to be able to put some stuff out there, maybe inspire a person or two to help them ask for help.
Yeah, I'm still getting messages from the podcast we did on that. So we encourage you, if you have not, go into the archives, go check out the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy episode on mental health and addiction. It's maybe my favorite piece of business I've ever done in broadcasting. And it's a special one. And if you want to really pay it forward to Matt Hardy and I, there's something you can do as well when you check it out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. What can they do to help us out, Matt?
They can leave us a very nice review and a 5-star review. And in all seriousness, not even joking. I mean, if you feel like you're going through a period where you're struggling or you're having issues with dealing with life, it feels overwhelming, I really recommend going into our archives and listening to the chat myself and Mr. Alba have about mental health and addiction. And I think there's a lot of material in there that could help you, maybe realize you can get through this. And that was kind of the whole basis of our conversation, to try and help people to get through these tough and challenging times. And if you are struggling right now in life, please go back and listen to it. I think it will help you.
Please do, and I'm very proud. Next week, we'll be making an announcement about a new partnership here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy as a result of that episode, and I think it's going to help a lot of people, and I'm very excited to talk about that next week here. But a couple more things before we start talking about the hurricane. We had a busy week last week. I'll start with this one. We got the new TNT champion, Wardlow. This guy's an absolute beast. He's like a real-life James Bond, and he said if he could have any dream match, it would be tagging with the Hardy Boys. How cool is that?
And a 6-man tag. That is very cool. From the first time I met Wardlow, I really appreciated him. He was very respectful, very, very nice, very kind. He's a good guy. And I see a lot of potential in him as far as being like a crossover into mainstream star. I think that would be possible for him. He's a very talented guy. Like, he can do so much more than you would expect him to for his size and his look. He's extremely athletic, and he's also very charismatic. Good looking dude. And yeah, I would love to do a trios run with Wardlow. Once Brother Nero takes care of himself and he gets to where he needs to be, Matt, Jeff, and Wardlow together would be really, really fun. Could be trios tag team champs one day if we get those titles in.
I would love that. He looks like a movie star in every possible way.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the most marketable guys that AEW has, and I'm very, very happy to see him making the strides that he has. The new TNT champion winning a heck of a street fight against Scorpio Sky. Somebody else, by the way, who I think could be a crossover guy, Scorpio Sky. I think he's very, very talented.
Very much so.
Yeah. And then, digging up some sore spots here, Matt, but your best frenemy, Christian Cage. That guy, kind of a piece of shit, huh?
He's a real piece of fecal matter. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. He's a little CLB, a creepy little bitch. It's one of those things. He came very low, came very strong with some low blows. And if I actually have a chance to interact with him tonight, I feel like I got some low blows to hit him back with. I mean, if you want to get down in the dirt and roll around and get muddy, I'm willing to do it as well, Christian Cage. So I'll see you out there. And keep in mind, Christian, I'm not a little bitch who had a little head injury and took 9 years off. Get your act together. You want to be tough, you want to be a legit wrestler, you want to be hardcore, then don't sit at home crying because you have a little bump on your head for 9 years.
And you're the king of concussions, as we've talked about here on this podcast. So who better than you to speak out on that?
Exactly. He went home just because he was afraid. That's why he took all that time off. It wasn't even injury related, I don't think. He was just being a bitch. It's what he does better than anybody else, be a bitch.
Producer Dom calls him the Michael Jordan of assholes.
That's what he is, yeah. He is absolutely, when I said that, you know how Michael Jordan, anytime he set some amazing record, you didn't think he could go past it or beat it, and he just kept raising the bar over and over and over and over. That's totally what Christian Cage is when it comes to being an asshole. He is truly the Michael Jordan of being an asshole. He can get off himself.
I think he has surpassed Jose on this show, which is really quite a statement too.
Yeah. When you're a bigger piece of shit than Jose the assistant, boy, you're a bad one.
Yeah. And there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about Matt Hardy, because you caused a pretty interesting discourse on social media about social media. I know this was something that was marinating in your head over the weekend. Anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I mean, that's the response I expected. I didn't expect it to be 90 to 10%. Obviously, for someone who isn't in the loop, I did a poll on social media for one day, 24 hours. And it said, do you feel like on society and in human interactions, has social media, and I posted on Twitter, so most people are going to, by default, think I'm talking about Twitter. But I said, do you think it has been had a positive effect on society and human interactions, or a negative effect on society and human interactions? And it was a 90 negative effect and 10% positive effect. And I expected the negative effect to win, but I didn't think it would be that steep. I'll be honest. There's a lot of things about social media that are great, especially if you're a aspiring artist or performer, it allows you to display either your business or like your brand or your product or your talents, whatever it may be. It's a great tool for pro wrestlers. It's a way to get your name out. It's a way to network. It's a way to actually advertise and promote yourself. But on the other hand, there's so many people that just are so irresponsible and unaccountable with their usage of social media and just the human interaction that is so negative. It's like people would never say that in a face-to-face scenario, but being protected, being behind a keyboard, and knowing they aren't going to be accountable for it, then people often buck wild. So that's one of the most frustrating things. And also something that is very bad about social media is just the fact that some people who aren't thinking about the big picture and aren't here to help society in general or aren't being a good person will find other people similar to them that are like-minded, and then they'll create this echo chamber and they feel justified in their wrong beliefs. And on top of that too, there's just a lot of misinformation and disinformation. You really have to know how to navigate yourself if you're going to be on social media or Twitter or anywhere else, because it really is a very weird, strange world where almost anything goes. And you always have to remember, like, don't believe every single thing you read, because the accuracy of all this stuff is certainly not very solid. You have to understand, if you read something, that doesn't mean it's a fact. That doesn't mean it's a truth. And also, if someone is insulting you or being mean to you, just realize it's not real. And Twitter and social media is not a representation of reality. Always remember that. And it goes like this: if someone is insulting you or someone's mean to you on social media, it's not real. But also, the compliments and the things people might say to you to put you over isn't necessarily real as well. You have to be very self-aware if you're going to be on social media. And you also have to kind of have you have to have thick skin, because you have to be able to read stuff and just let it go. You can't take stuff personally.
That is a matter of fact. And I think it leads us to our Matt Fact on this Hurricane Helms edition of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Hit us with it.
Matt Fact: Matt requires 7 hours of sleep to be productive.
How many did you get last night?
I got 7. So
Okay.
I'm good. I'm productive today.
Okay, good. I was curious.
And it's funny. I might can get away with 6, but if I can get 7, I am good for the entirety of the day.
That's
if
great.
I can get 7 hours, that's my magical number. If I can get it, like I obviously, realistically, I don't get that all the time, but I can tell you, like when I was 25, I could sleep, 2, 3, 4 hours, and I would be okay to go throughout the day. But not now, man. I need 6 to 7 hours of sleep. 7 is ideal.
Well, you celebrated your baby girl's birthday this past weekend. I know the gaggle of kids keep you up when you're home, and you're putting the work in. So kudos to the Hardy family there for keeping Matt Hardy nice, like the Energizer Bunny, just going and going and going and going. So
exactly. I can't believe Daddy's little girl is 1 year old. It's crazy that year flew by.
Happy birthday to her. And happy birthday to Shane Helms. I thought the Matt Fact was going to be a reminder once again that Shane Helms is the elder here in between you guys. And he turned 48 years old on July 12th. He was born in Smithfield, North Carolina. He makes his debut in wrestling in 1991 at age 17. Now, one of my favorite episodes of this podcast was the Omega episode, and we're going to talk about Omega this week too. What was the wrestling scene looking like in North Carolina in the year 1991?
Well, that was obviously right before we started getting into the business. It was pretty scattered. There wasn't like a real like solid promotion that was drawing a lot in the North Carolina area, the Mid-Atlantic area. I do know the Italian Stallion and George South, they had smaller shows, which ended up being at like Armories or VFWs or wherever it may be, sometimes at a high school or whatever. But, they weren't necessarily concerned as much about drawing huge numbers of people or putting on a great show. They were literally trying to milk as much sponsorships as they could out of the town, and they were trying to pocket as much money. And, we started working with these guys, and we didn't get paid for anything. Obviously, we had to do them all for free if we still wanted to go to the WWE and be booked as enhancement talent. But it was worthwhile because we learned like psychology and we really learned how to work and terminology and whatnot. So we kind of got that on the house. So I guess that was our trade-off for working free for all those years for staying in George South.
When do you remember first coming against Gregory Helms?
The first time I remember meeting him was probably 1994. They had a show going on in Goldston, North Carolina. And he was there as a manager this night. And the guy that would be his partner, Mike Howell. Mike Maverick was wrestling in a singles capacity, and Shane was out there as his manager. And I remember he had a ton of heat that night. And this was a pretty decent sized show. There were probably 300-400 people here. And I remember myself and my brother, maybe Shannon Moore, went to check it out because it was another promotion. We're like, oh, maybe this is another place that we could work in the future. You know, maybe make a couple bucks, maybe make a $20 or $40 payday here. And we actually saw Shane for the very first time. He was like a heat magnet on that day. And I remember he got stoned. They threw rocks at him, and he had rocks that hit him in the head during the show.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was the very first time that I met him. I mean, not like big-ass rocks, but like pebbles. There was pebbles all around outside this venue, and people were throwing pebbles at him whenever he was out there being the heel manager of Mike Maverick.
I didn't even know he was doing managing at the time. I couldn't even find anything on that in my research. How was he as a manager?
Well, I typically don't think he was managing. I think on this scenario, whenever he showed up, they thought they were going to have a tag match.
Oh, okay.
Someone no-showed, so it ended up turning into a single, and he just obviously went out there because he was booked on the show and like was just in his partner's corner. So that was my first introduction to him. So I remember like he was all in on being a heel. He was all in on getting heat, and he did get that night as they stoned him on the very first appearance.
That's insanity. Wow. I mean, that's old school heat right there, getting stoned.
Yeah.
And not in like the Michael Hayes way either, you know? That's
right.
That's a pretty cool way to get some heat there, man. And I always thought he'd be a great manager. He did have a little bit of a run in Impact too, doing the Helms dynasty, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I would have liked to have seen more of Gregory Helms as a manager because he's got, and we're going to talk about this over the course of the episode, but he has great intellect for the industry and kind of what's the right word? Forming talent, crafting talent. I think is something he would be very good.
I mean, I think our careers kind of run a parallel when it comes to that because anytime we are with younger talent, we're always teaching them and coaching them on scene. You know, whatever they're doing. So he was so great whenever he managed Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee, and he taught them so much during that process, you know, at TNA whenever they were doing Impact. And, you know, same thing with me in Private Party. And we enjoy doing that stuff as well because it puts us in a role where we can still show our personality, but we can also coach and teach young guys at the exact same time.
I think there's a lot of parallels between your careers in general.
A lot of parallels, not only between our careers, but also just between our lives. And I think that's why we hit it off so well, because we were so similar in so many ways.
So you said you first encountered him in 1994. When do you strike up a friendship with him?
This is when it started. After we met these guys this night, we talked to them afterwards, and then we started staying in contact, obviously. And that is what slowly but surely led us to interacting more and helping each other get booked in different places and also booking them for Omega.
You grew up about like an hour, 15, hour, 20 apart?
Yep. Yeah. From my house to his house, it was an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay. So it's wild that you would have never met each other had it not been for this world of wrestling. That just connected you guys, even though you were so close to each other.
Yeah.
And he's your kindred spirit here.
He really is. And man, now that we just brought that up, John, I want to go ahead and jump into a story real quick. We lived an hour and 15 minutes apart, right? So whenever we had first started Omega and after we met Shane, we had a ring that was set up, and it was at Tracy Goodell's house, which is Trevor Lee's dad or Cameron Grimes' dad. And that's where we kept our ring. It was outside there. And we would work out typically on Sundays if we weren't doing anything. So I got a pretty great story to share here. So Shane and his partner came and worked out with us on this one weekend. It was a Sunday. And as we were at Tracy's or Trevor's house, and we'd finished working out, we went pretty late during the session. It was about 8 o'clock, 8:30. And the next day, obviously, it was February when it was very cold, and we stayed there as long as we could possibly stay during the day. We finished up about 8 o'clock, as I was saying. And we went back to walk Shane and Mike back to their cars. They were going to leave and go back to where they lived in Smithfield, Raleigh area. And once we got back, Shane realized that he had locked his keys in his car.
Oh, no.
So his keys were in his car. So we sat there for probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes, like trying to like use a Slim Jim and see if we can unlock the car, pick it, do whatever. And it's like 9 o'clock. The next day's Monday. I've got an early morning. I've got a full plate on my schedule. So I go, damn, man, do you have any other keys? And he said, well, they're just at my house. And I said, fuck. And I was the only one that was free. And I said, I'll drive you there.
Wow.
So keep in mind, very young man at this time. And I had just got my yellow CRX. When I first drove to begin with, I drove one of my dad's cars, which was like an early 80s Pontiac car, and it was a big old jalopy, whatever. I drove that for about a year. And then I'd saved up money from working at a car wash, and my dad went half and half with me. And I was able to get a yellow CRX. That was my first cool car that I had. And it had 145,000 miles on it whenever I bought it. So that was my car. And it had some problems. It didn't have any heat in it. Didn't have air, didn't have heat. So it's February, the middle of the winter. And I say, Shane, look, man, I'll just drive you back to your house, an hour and 50 minutes away. We'll get your keys, and I'll bring you back to your car so you can unlock it, so you can, get your schedule on, get your schedule together. We go back to my house to get coats first, because obviously it is so cold. We're driving now. It's like 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night. And we go into my house, and my dad had already gone to bed. He's going to work in the morning. And then I hear, as we're going in and I'm getting these jackets out of my room, I hear my dad, boom, 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 something down the hall. And he's mad, like, what the hell? Where are you going? I said, oh, well, I have to take my friend Shane. He left his keys in his car. I have to take him back to his house. It's about an hour and 15 minutes away. And then I'm going to drop him back to his car so he can actually get home tonight. And he said, he looked at Shane, who was by the wall. My dad's in his underwear. And he's going, what the hell are you doing here? And he said, oh, well, Matt just offered to give me a ride. And he said, I don't call Matt when I have car trouble. I don't call Matt whenever I like my keys in my car. I'm an adult. Why did you call Matt? And he said, I didn't call Matt. Matt offered to do it. And my dad got so hot. That was the first time Shane ever met my dad. That was the first experience. And I remember he was laughing about it, how he came out in his saggy underwear. And he was all, Shane still see me say, what the hell are you doing here? He like pointed at him with his finger, like right underneath his nose. What the hell are you doing here? And then I got these jackets and I got a sweatshirts, and we drove because it was super cold that night. An hour and 15 minutes over there, and then an hour and 15 minutes back. And now I'm getting home like at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's all said and done. So my dad was, he had a very bad experience the very first time he met Sugar Shane Helms.
If I'm not mistaken, your dad was referred to as the legend, wasn't he?
Yes. The legend was his name. He was so funny because he was our biggest critic, obviously, when we first started wrestling in the very beginning. And he said, we would go do indie shows, and I go, we just really hope that we can earn a contract one day to either, WWF or WCW or ECW. That's what we're going to do. And I said, we just went and wrestled. He said, would you make any money? I said, oh, well, we made $20. I mean, we spent probably 40 or 50 between gas and food as we were doing it, and it was a 7 or 8 hour drive, but we made some really good contacts. He said, I got to let you know something, Matt. That pro wrestling shit is fake. And I go, Dad, I know. I do it. I mean, I actually do the same thing. I mean, I know you're talking about what's on TV, but it's like the same thing, just on different levels. That's a great moment too. But after we signed and we made it and we started making money and we were buying things for our dad, he became like our biggest fan. And he was just so amazing. He was so supportive, and he loved coming to any matches whenever we were locally. And he was just so great. And I think that people started calling him the legend because he would go around and he would tell, like, he'd go up to ladies. He'd see like a lady who was like a young, attractive lady, go, hey, you know who I am? I'm the Hardy Boys' daddy. People call me the legend. And he would invite them over. He'd give them his number. He was just so funny. He enjoyed life so much. He enjoyed life to the max always.
Yeah. When I was with Gangrel in the car, he was telling me about the legend.
Yeah.
That's how he referred to him. He didn't even say their dad. He just said the legend. So
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. And so obviously Shane got to know him a little bit. I'm really surprised Shane didn't fly back to Smithfield. I mean,
well, that was a pre-hurricane. So
that was before the radioactive powers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was before he got sucked up in a hurricane, and it changed his physical structure, and he became a superhero.
Gotcha. Okay. The origin story is
the origin story. Yeah.
We should let that play out. Okay. So on record, what I could find, he debuts in Omega October 10th, 1997. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that does sound right.
Okay. He's using the name Kid Vicious at this time, and he's working with Mike Maverick as the serial Thrillist. Previously, they had tried out a name, Assault and Battery, but Assault and Battery just doesn't seem like the most marketable name.
So after I read your notes, I asked him about this, and he said that they may have called him that one time. He said there was going to be a joke about it because he was so skinny that he was like a AAA battery.
Oh,
so that was where the joke was going to originate from. He said, I don't know, he said, we must have used it somewhere, or it was somehow out there if your guy found it for the notes. So he said they never really used that on a regular basis, though, which was very funny. He said the name they were talking about using were the T-Birds. He said where he was going to be T-Bone, I guess because he was so skinny. And then what was Mike going to be? And he was going to be, I don't know. But their whole gimmick is the T-Birds as a tag team name. They were both going to do the bird, and then they were going to cross them like a T. That was going to be the whole gimmick behind it. But they ended up going with Serial Thrillers, which I liked a lot better. I can't imagine them anything else other than the Serial Thrillers because they were both like big rap fans as well.
So they debut in 1997 in Omega, and they defeat the team of Maximum Carnage, which was Foma and Hydro. Yeah. And they also defeat Bobby Burnett and TC Brimstone.
Yes.
What do you remember about the reaction of the Serial Thrillers then?
What was that?
What do you remember about the reaction that they got upon first coming into Omega?
It was good. I mean, after we met them, we really knew they were like-minded guys, and we worked with them on some indie shows. And I think we had talked about booking them at a couple Omega shows before where they were booked or their dates were full or whatever. But eventually, once they did come into Omega, then they became like, they were regulars, and they were part of our main roster, obviously. I do have a very good story about whenever Shane first showed up, Shane and Mike Howell. So we didn't know these guys, right? But we knew that they were – Shane was very similar to me, and he was very motivated. He wanted to make a career out of this, and he was very smart. He knew what he was doing. He knew psychology. He was very good at character work, and his partner was too. Shane was the better of the two, but his partner knew it as well. His partner was the bigger guy, so he's kind of the heater, right? So they did our show on a Saturday. The night before, they had a show Friday in Greensboro somewhere, and Manny Fernandez, the raging old Manny Fernandez, was on the show. So Manny Fernandez came up to them as they were eating in this restaurant afterwards and said, "Hey, where are you guys working tomorrow?" Said, where you guys booked at tomorrow? You're booked tomorrow, right? And they said, "Yeah, we're booked tomorrow. We're in Sanford, North Carolina." They said, "Yeah, Stanford. I'm there too. I'm there too. I'm booked tomorrow. What building is that at again? I can't remember. I want to make sure I got it right. What building is that in again?" And Shane said, "Manny, I don't think you would be booked at this show, because this is like our friend. They only use like local guys and local talent. They have like their own promotion, their own roster. Pretty sure you're not booked there." Manny said, "No, I'm booked there. I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there." And then I remember Shane and Mike, they walked in, and obviously we're still like new friends. We don't know each other super well. We haven't been super close. But then they walk in the very first day, said, "Hey, Matt, we want to warn you." And keep in mind, I'm the booker. I'm like this 18-year-old booker at the time. And I've been setting up the show. I'm already stressed out from putting the whole show together and trying to book the card. And he says, "Look, man, I got to tell you, Manny Fernandez was at our show last night. He asked us where we're working today, and we said Sanford, and he said he was here too. I know he's not booked here, but I've got a feeling he's going to show up, and he's going to try and push his way onto the show." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, thanks for that heads up." And then, myself and Jeff and Shannon and Marty, our crew were like, "Oh my God, are these guys trying to fuck us? Like, can we trust them? Did they really send Manny here on their own?" And I'll never forget when Manny showed up, and he was with someone that was doing a gimmick like he was Dick Murdoch's cousin, Frankie Murdoch or something, nephew. And he showed up and said, "Yeah, where do we dress out?" And I said, "Hi, sir. My name's Matt." I said, "I'm the promoter. I'm the one who booked the building, and I booked the card. I'm so sorry, but there's no space for you on the show. I'm not going to be able to use you, and I don't have any money. Every dollar that I have right now has already been accounted for, and it's going to be paid out. So I'm sorry, I don't have any money." And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "I was booked." I said, "Well, that's not true, because I booked everyone, sir." And I just see this guy who I've heard nightmare stories about from the independents. He's got a gun in his bag, and he beats people up, and he's violent, and he stabbed people, whatever. And I'm having to stand up to this guy that I watched on TV growing up. And I go, "I'm so sorry, sir, but you're not booked on this show." I said, "I booked everyone." He said, "No, I was booked by Henry Dean." He said, "And I'm going to work. I'm going to wrestle tonight, and I'm going to get paid, or somebody is going to get their ass whipped." And he got up in my face. He said, "And it might be you." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I remember the first thing I said is like, "So sorry you feel that way, sir. I do not have any money for you." And I noticed that Shane and Mike, like my guys, Jeff, Jason Arndt, Marty, Shannon, they all stood by me, and they were like backing me up. And then I know Shane and Mike had told Manny, like, "I think this is a mistake." They slid over to our side. So now there was like 7 or 8 of us in one line against these two guys. And he said, "Okay, well, if it was a mistake, can I at least set up my gimmick table, brother?" and try to make a few bucks there? I said, yes, that's fine. Please set up your gimmick table, go crazy. And I was just so happy to be out of that situation. Obviously being intimidated by Manny Fernandez at 18 years old, being threatened. Oh, I am going to be on the show and I'm going to get paid, or somebody's going to get their ass whipped, and it might be you. He got up in my face. What a memory that story is. And that was the first time Shane was booked. That's what stands out more than anything else.
You can hear more stories like that on our Omega episode. You talk about that and some other great stories about the crew, because the crew really did have your back, and I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And it just on top of that, I remember that more about Shane's first appearance than the actual match. But I do know when he was out there, like you could tell these guys really jived together as a tag team. And they were really good, and they were on the same page, and they knew what they were doing, and they knew how to get over. So that's one thing. They were a huge asset to Omega.
Yeah, they certainly were, and Greg ends up really developing as a super, super, super smooth worker, even for that era where guys like him weren't necessarily getting a ton of exposure. You know, we're talking mid to late 90s here. This is the era of giants in general. WCW, of course, is starting to showcase cruiserweights a little more. So there's starting to be more of a path forward for guys like him. But still, he's forming a name for himself, and he's establishing a reputation. And meanwhile, Manny Fernandez is a janitor at a La Quinta. So all things considered, it ends up working out for him in the early goings there in Omega. What do you remember about those early matches with the serial thrillers that you guys were having, you and Jeff, of course?
They were always great, and it was always fun working those guys, because they, especially if we were baby faces in the match and they were heels. And something I say this all the time nowadays. I say, like, if you're going to be a heel in pro wrestling, the most important thing you have to do is relinquish your fear of being an asshole. And they were always on board with that. You know, they were all out. They were into being heels, and that's what a good babyface team needs. Someone who relinquishes their fear of being an asshole, and you let it all hang out. So it was always great working with them, because on top of them being great heels, they also knew what they were doing. And we optimized and maximized every single thing we did. We got the most out of everything.
One of the most memorable spots in Omega history and indie wrestling history, quite frankly. If you were a tape trader in the 90s, you saw this spot. If you've seen it on YouTube since, it's gone very, very viral. Is actually a match between it's a setup for a match between your two teams, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you, Matt Hardy, are laid out on a table, and Mike Maverick is holding you down, and you're in an armory of sorts. And Shane Helms comes off a truck structure. I'll let you explain it in a second, but he overshoots you just a little bit and hits the ultimate face plant that is just absolutely disgusting. Go ahead and recount this for us, because it is one that if you haven't seen it, you have to go out of your way. And I'm glad that he was largely okay after this.
Right. He scorpioned himself after that. You know, like his head hit, and literally his legs came all the way over his body and touched the floor in front of his head. That's how insane it was. So I'll never forget this day. I remember showing up at the Armory that morning. We had the ring, and we were like doing load in, and there's this huge back of a transfer truck thing that would literally be used to carry like all this Army equipment and Army machinery, whatever. And it's huge, you know, it's like 20 feet high off the ground. And I go, are you guys going to be able to move this out today? Because like I paid, you know, $250 and $150 and $100 deposit, whatever it was in that day and age to rent this Armory. And we're supposed to have the whole space. And he said, nope, it's a wartime emergency. They had to move this in here because this was the only place to store it. So it has to stay in here. I said, I'm so sorry about that, but this has to stay. And we're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, this is taking so much space. You know, already in the beginning, this Armory isn't like a huge space, and you want to maximize everything with the ring. And I was like, well, maybe we can build it into the set somehow and make it just like part of the whole wrestling show and the wrestling event. And I said, oh, maybe even at the end, we can do something where somebody comes off of it and we can use it as a spot or whatever. Like, we'll try and make the most. This is what we have to work with. Make the most of it, as we all do in pro wrestling. And I'll never forget, we're in that same Armory where Manny Fernandez showed up. Once again, Shane walks in, and instead of warning me about Manny showing up, he walks in and I go, hey, man, look, this big piece of shit is stuck in here, and we're going to have to work around it. They can't get rid of it. So I was thinking, like, at the very end of my match, would you be willing to, like, jump off this and put me through a table? And he said, Yeah, sure. And just rolled, walked right into the locker room with his bags. It was just like he like looked up at it like, yeah, sure, why not? That simple. And I get thrown off of it into the ring, and then Mike puts me on the table, and then Shane comes off, and like, uh, I was okay. Shane definitely got the worst end of it because he was jumping off, and like his neck was all beat the shit up after that, after he scorpioned himself. Um, but that was a very, very memorable moment, and one of the most viral clips in all of Omega history.
What kind of potential did you see in him in those early stages, those matches you were having with him, and how close did you guys become during that time period?
Really close. I think that's like where we were like best friends close, because once again we were so like minded, and on top of that, we thought the same as far as the way we structure matches. We thought the same as far as like working hard to make a career out of this, and just the path we were taking. And also, as most people know, when it came to like promoting yourself and doing social media, both Shane and I were guys that were ahead of the curve when it came to all that. So we had all these things in common, and we really hit it off. We just had so much in common. I would say, from the first year I met him, we became pretty close to being best friends, if not best friends.
I was going through your YouTube channel this past week and I saw a video from 1998. It was about the WWF dojo days, the
Right.
fucking dojo that we talked about last week here in the archives. You can go check out. And Shane shows up in it. He's 24 years old there, and you and Jeff clearly have a great relationship. There's a little scenic moment with you guys strolling along the beach, hitting some poses. Was he super close with Jeff as well in that time?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, him and I were more alike, so him and I were closer because we really saw the same. Jeff was probably a lot closer with Shannon. They were probably more the same from like an artistic perspective. But we were all close. All of the Omega guys were really, really tightly knit together.
You end up getting your full-time developmental deal, and he's kind of left on the outside looking in. You and Jeff are going up to New York.
Yeah.
He's still trying to cut his teeth. How did he feel about you guys getting signed and leaving the territory per se?
They were all excited, and they were very happy for us, which was great. There was no ill will towards anyone, and once again, they knew if we had a foot in the door that we would do everything we could to help them as well. We wanted to bring everyone up and get everyone jobs when it was all said and done. It's pretty amazing, pretty remarkable when you look back at all the people that work for Omega that went and actually signed contracts for big companies. It's a huge number, especially for a group that just started together.
Do you remember putting an Iggy in anybody's ear about him?
Yeah, I do remember talking about Shane a little bit, and there was actually one point where they were very close right before they went to WCW. They had even talked about maybe even hiring them and sending them to developmental. And ultimately, I did get that gig for Christian York and Joey Mercury at that time. I got them hired at a developmental with WWE. This was after Shannon and Shane got picked up at WCW and started doing the 3-count gig. So they were obviously already set because they had a deal somewhere else.
That video was so much fun, by the way. If people haven't checked it out, go on Matt's YouTube page, MATTHARDYBRAND. You guys really had a brotherhood over there in the Funkin' Dojo, and it was so cool seeing those clips of Test. We talked about Test with the jobbers and all that, and Christian before he was an asshole to you. Like, it was awesome. Just looking at Albert eating Albert. We didn't talk about this. Albert, Matt Bloom, had a like exotic animal terrarium at his apartment.
Yeah, that
was insane.
Yeah.
Like
dragon. He loved the animals. Yeah, he did. He had that little dragon. We would stop and visit him whenever we're in the north and doing indie shots there around his neck of the woods.
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely wild. So you just talked about them going to WCW, and that's exactly what happens. He and Shannon head up to WCW, and they become 2/3 of 3-count. Were you guys in communication a lot, you and Shane, at that point? And what did you think of his decision to go to Atlanta?
I mean, obviously, once again, super happy for them that they were going to get an opportunity and they were going to be making an actual career, a living out of being a pro wrestler, which is what everybody initially wanted to do. I said myself and Jeff, our goal was to make a living as a professional wrestler and then win the World Tag Team titles one time. So fortunately, we were able to do that and then many times over. And I think it was the same thing for those guys. They just wanted to make a career out of being a pro wrestler. So, man, I was stoked whenever they got that 3 count gig. And I thought they made the most of it too. They really, really did.
Yeah, what do you think of 3 count?
I like 3 count. I love the fact that they had the silly green circles, and like boy bands were real hot at that time. It was a big Jimmy Hart project. He is the one that, like kind of made this all come together. He had an idea for doing like a boy band, some young, handsome dudes, whatever. And Chris Canyon also was hugely influential in getting them signed too, because he had saw them whenever they did the Bad Street Boys, or they had some gimmick that they did in Nashville, which was all four of them. It was a Shane, Shannon, Christian, and Joy Mercury. And they had done that a little bit for Bill Behrens, and they'd done some Nashville stuff, some Memphis stuff. And they ended up picking up Shane and Shannon, and they stuck them with Evan Courageous, and they had this boy band 3 count to get heat and piss people off.
So Shane was all about the gimmick. He was into it.
Yeah, I mean, Shane is very like-minded, like me, when it comes to things like that. I mean, if he's given something that maybe isn't his ideal gimmick or spot, he's going to make the most out of it. Because if you make the most out of it, people know that you actually have the potential to play any kind of character, and you have a lot of depth, and you can do things.
That was a time period in WCW. We actually just covered it on 83 Weeks, Eric Bischoff and I, 1999, where Kevin Nash is the booker. And man, there is just a lot of gaga going on in that company in that year, especially leading into 2000. And a lot of the young guys tend to go by the wayside just a little bit. But one thing about Shane Helms is that he wins the Cruiserweight Championship towards the end of WCW's run there on their last pay-per-view, Greed, and he gets an opportunity to show that there's some potential here. How did you perceive the interest in him around the time of the end of WCW?
I mean, obviously, as you could tell, he was getting pushed really hard, and it was just a terrible break as far as timing goes, because he really did. He invested and busted his ass to make the most that he could out of 3 count, and he ended up becoming the standout guy of the three. And then he was given an opportunity to, wrestle for the Cruiserweight title and eventually win it. And he was getting real hot, and he was getting over at that time. So it was just terrible timing that's the time that WCW was bought by WWE and absorbed by WWE, because if WCW would have continued on, I think he was in line for a good push, and he would have really continued to get himself over, because he was in the spot he wanted to be in for so long, that he worked so hard to get through 3 count and whatnot, and that's what it is in pro wrestling often. Like, you'll end up getting a gig that it might not be an ideal gig, but you just have to make the most of it, and you have to be patient and wait until something opens up where you kind of get to do what you want to do, and you get a chance to really exhibit all of your talents and skills. And he just got to that point where he was getting, he was showing the world what he could do, and then bam, WCW's gone.
So when WCW closes, is he giving you a call? Are you talking to the office being like, hey, this guy deserves a look? How's that unfold?
Yeah, I did hear. I had a little inside knowledge and spoke with Michael Hayes some. And I knew they were going to pick him up. There was a certain number of guys that they were going to automatically bring over that didn't have big, outrageous contracts, or whatever. So I knew he was going to be safe. He was going to come to work with WWE and Shannon as well.
How cool was that for you guys?
Very cool. Very cool. Now that, WCW shut down, it was much better that WWE bought it and absorbed it, as opposed to just shutting down and then all these guys being unemployed and out of a job. So, and obviously, as has been said so many millions of times over, I mean, I wish the WCW invasion angle could have been done differently, if they would have been a little more patient with it and tried to really make it work in the correct way that it could have, or, if they would have optimized the potential of it, I think it could have been a really big deal. But just when it was all said and done, Vince was just like, fuck it, just put all these guys on our TV, just put all these guys on WWE TV, as opposed to waiting around to get a WCW show on its own. So I was just happy those guys were still making a living being a pro wrestler.
So he does eventually come over to WWE as Hollywood Gregory Helms on July 5th, 2001. This is an awesome, awesome episode of Raw. If you haven't checked this one out, this is probably the high point of the invasion, truthfully, this episode of Raw. He's renamed Hollywood Gregory Helms because, well, you can't have too many Shanes, pal. If there's too many Shanes on TV, how's anyone going to know who's who?
I was actually talking to him a little earlier before doing this, and he was saying, like, his debut, he probably lost more than anybody else lost, in their debut. Because like, not only did he lose his name, like the Sugar Shane Helms, because obviously Shane McMahon was there. The Sugar was gone. The Shane was gone. And he was worried about Helms too, because Triple H was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He's like, oh my God, are they going to take Helms as well? And then he lost his title. He said, considering he went on to have a great career, that's probably a debut where people lose like almost everything that made them them. And then he was able to still make something out of himself, which, speaks about his talent.
What did you think of his first few weeks there in WWE? Did he acclimate well to the system? Because for a lot of guys, it was definitely baptism by fire.
Yeah, he did. And I obviously had been around there for a few years at this time now. So I was able to kind of give them insight on, what to do, what not to do. These are the best people to talk to. If you want to try and get an idea, I would suggest going through this person or doing it this way. So I was able to give them a little insight into those things as well. And another very funny story, whenever the whole Hurricane Helms thing comes to be, whenever they're doing his debut. And do you remember the shot that he did with Stone Cold? Where they had like a little platter of like appetizers.
Mm-hmm.
Vince was like going over this, and a story that is so funny. Like Shane said, as Vince was talking to him, he said, I don't know, maybe we'll do it like this. He said, say, maybe you pick up a tomato, you nibble on it a little bit, you hear what he's saying. Then maybe you pick up a carrot and do it. And then every time they would go over it, Vince specifically said those two things. I mean, there were 10 or 12 different things on this big vegetable platter. He said, maybe there you get a tomato, pal. You nibble on it, and then you get a carrot. And he said, holy fuck, I have to eat a tomato and a carrot. If not, I think he's testing me right here. That was one of his first interactions with Vince McMahon, which was so funny. And then, that's where they brought the Green Lantern tattoo into the shot as well. And he said, oh yeah, Green Lantern, he knocked out Superman with one punch. He had a line he was going to do. And they could tell he was like big into comic books, and he was able to get his name changed to Hurricane Helms at that time. And he sold them on it, following that night.
Well, he's into the Green Lantern. Rumor has it, Matt Hardy, you are into Athletic Greens' best product, AG1.
You know it.
What?
That I am into AG1s.
I know you are. And let me tell you something about AG1s. They are a proud sponsor of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We're using this every single day. It is a one delicious scoop every single morning right into your immune system. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. It's a special blend of ingredients supporting your gut health, nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, everything. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anythings while still tasting good. It is a micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. I know that you love it, and I know that superheroes like the Hurricane probably enjoy their AG1s as well.
Yes, AG1s allow me to have the attributes to still do pro wrestling at age 47. How old Shane again? Oh, 48. I'll respect my elder though. AG1s, they definitely they help keep my attitude at the highest level possible.
What's up with that? Well, I'll tell you what's up with that. This is a product that's going to cost you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health. It's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. And right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop and a cup of water every single day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first
free. How many packs? 5 free packs.
All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Hardy. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Hardy to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I would love to know what Athletic Greens and AG1s can do for a superhero. Because I think that would supercharge a superhero, quite frankly.
100%. He could probably, I know sometimes when he flies, it's hard for him to make it an extremely long distance. I would imagine if he takes his AG1s, probably for 3 to 4 months, he could probably make a trip all the way around the world.
I think he probably could. I think you're right about that. The question that I have though is, can a hurricane slap a tornado, Matt Hardy?
Not like I can.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
just want to make sure.
Okay.
That's
Well,
something you have over him too.
yeah. I just want to confirm that. I just also want to confirm that I am 47 years old and he is 48.
Okay.
I don't want to make fun of him because I want to respect my elders.
Yes. I don't think you've mentioned that yet.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, okay. I just want to mention it. I want to make sure it was out there.
Got it. July 24th, 2001, you and Jeff defeat Shane and Billy Kidman on SmackDown. It's the first time you wrestled each other on WWE TV. Given both of your journeys, that had to have been a pretty surreal night for you guys.
Go ahead and ask the question again.
Given how far you and Shane have come through the years to have your first match on WWF television, that had to be really cool for you guys, I'd imagine.
Extremely cool. I mean, anytime you get to work with someone that you came up with, especially when you guys both shared this insane journey that is pro wrestling, and you're trying to make a career out of all this, and you get a chance to work him on the biggest platform, on the big stage, it's always a blast and always an honor, because you guys are out there and you know that you shared that same dream and you guys have made it together. So it makes it even all the more special. And it's the greatest experience ever. It's hard to put into words, actually.
So you just alluded to it before, but he becomes the Hurricane on TV August 27, 2001. And on that same night, he beats you for the European Championship after he gets some interference from Ivory. It's a quick match, but here's one of your friends debuting a new character and pinning you for a title on TV. What's up with that?
Oh yeah, I'm ready to do business, especially if business is doing good for all parties involved. And it was going to be very beneficial for him. So yeah, I was very cool with doing that.
What's up with the Hurricane character? When do you remember first hearing about the idea for it? Obviously, we know he's a big comic book guy. He loves Green Lantern. And this is something that's going to start to get over. So where do you remember first hearing about this, and what were your initial reactions to it?
Obviously, it all started from the discussion about his Green Lantern tattoo, and people knew he was a big fan of comics. And I think Brian Gewirtz is probably one of the people who really pushed it hard, because he was like all in for doing a comic book character to some degree. And if anybody was going to do it, Shane is the guy, because he's like a lifelong comic fan. He still collects comics, still reads graphic novels and different comics and whatnot. So he has an extensive history and an extensive knowledge about comics as well. So if anybody was going to be able to play a superhero on WWE TV and make it work, Shane Helms was the guy.
When I hear superhero on TV, I kind of cringe at first thought, because you know how a guy like Vince can be with a superhero type character. Look at the 90s in WWE and the over-the-top characters that we got, Max Moon, all of these just ridiculous gimmicks. So there's a little bit of hesitance when I think about that on the surface level of, I'm going to portray a superhero in WWE. So what was the keys to making this work and get over?
Once again, Shane was a diehard comic fan, so he knew how to incorporate the fun and the comedy out of a comic book, and also the humor into this character to make it work, because you had to be able to like make fun of yourself. You had to be okay not to act like a fool in public. That was part of the whole gimmick. Obviously it was a comedy character to a degree, but there are so many people that loved Hurricane. Hurricane was one of the top merch movers at that time too. He was over huge, especially when he got over at his highest degree. He was beloved. People dug the character because he was so committed. And I think that's a big part with any character that you play. You really just have to be committed to it, much like I was with Broken Matt. I mean, he was totally committed to the Hurricane character. And if you step in with both feet, and you fully commit yourself, you can make something work, but you really do have to fully commit yourself. If you're hesitant in any way, shape, or form, people will snip that out always. They'll tell you're not committing yourself.
Yeah, he and Lance Storm pair up together. Then eventually Mighty Molly Holly gets added to the equation. I like the touch that she added to the character too. It was a nice way to round it out a little bit. They were a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, he wins the Hardcore Championship at WrestleMania, and then he gets hit with a frying pan from Molly Holly too. So he put her over on his way out of Toronto.
I'll tell you what, friends would do anything in that day and age to win that damned Hardcore title.
It's true.
Partners and friends would do anything.
Very true.
DTA, don't ever trust nobody.
His versatility was always something that stood out to me. In late 2002, he has a run of as cruiserweight champion. Then he and Kane team together to become Hurricane, and they win the tag titles. And that was a good way to showcase the strange bedfellows dynamic. I thought he was perfect with that.
They were great together, and I think teaming with Kane added a lot to Shane as Hurricane, especially with him doing the choke slam, and that became like one of his bits, that he was doing the choke slam based off his time spent with Kane. That was great content.
And in 2003, he forms a feud with, of all people, The Rock. There's a bunch of backstage vignettes with them. He doesn't take kindly to the fact that The Rock has kind of become a little bit of an asshole en route to his WrestleMania match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And eventually he faces him on Monday Night Raw on March 10th. And it's one of the more memorable moments in Monday Night Raw history. He wins via roll-up on The Rock after a distraction from Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, I got a two-part question for you here. There's a rumor that the finish was changed late and that he was supposed to go over clean, but there was some politicking going on that didn't allow for that to happen. I'm curious if you know anything about whether that is Matt Fact or Matt Fiction. And regardless of that, what did that moment mean for Shane?
I got to tell you, I don't know if that finish was changed. I do know Rocky loved doing those interactions with him. I mean, they had some hilarious pre-tapes and vignettes that were done. And Rocky really enjoyed his time with him, and he loved playing off the silliness of the Hurricane character. And I do know Rocky was cool with him winning the match. You know, I don't know if they changed it. They definitely wanted a distraction show tied back to him and Stone Cold, which I think in the big scheme of things that made sense. And that was a good way to go about it. But the fact that Hurricane defeated The Rock, who is now, you know, who was one of the biggest stars in WWE at that time and is now like one of the biggest movie stars in the world, is such an amazing fact. And I know you'd said that too. You think that is the last time Rocky lost a televised match, right? That's amazing.
Outside of pay-per-view, that's his last TV loss. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
Just insanity. What do you remember Shane feeling after that match?
He was so excited, so happy. And I mean, anytime you get some kind of win on someone who is like a top guy or a legend or an icon, which Rock was already kind of hitting that status by this point because he'd done so many cool things, you know, in such a short amount of time. You know, whenever you get to work top chain, especially you get a win, with me defeating Undertaker, Shane to do that, defeat The Rock. I mean, obviously he was on cloud nine after that. He really enjoyed it, and he working with Rocky as well.
I would imagine that you would be head over heels over working with a guy who is ready to become one of the biggest stars, not just in wrestling, but in the history of entertainment, as we said. And man, that last loss for The Rock is to the Hurricane. It's just so crazy. Let's fast forward a little bit here. He eventually forms a team with Rosie. You had your MFer in Shannon Moore. Well, he's got his superhero in training, his SHIT. And it's one of the more memorable runs of his career. I enjoyed his pairing with Rosie, but in October of 2005, he turns on Rosie and he becomes Gregory Helms. We're ditching the Hurricane character. Had the character just worn out its welcome at that point?
I don't think it had necessarily worn out its welcome, but I think like all characters, once you're on TV, you know, every single week and over and over and over again, I mean, you need to kind of let that character go away and change course and do something different until people, you know, have this aspiration to see that character again, I think. And I think that's what he was doing. He was just keeping it fresh. Wrestling is all about evolution, character evolution, and continuing to change yourself to do different things, you know, because people understand you are a Matt Hardy or you are a Shane Helms, but they also want to see different versions of you. Can't just do the same thing over and over and over and over again. You have to change things up and keep yourself fresh. So I think it was the perfect time to let Hurricane go away for a little bit and really lean into that heel turn. Even, you know, accepting the name of Gregory was quite shocking. That showed that he was all in for heel because he hates the name Gregory.
Does he really?
He's not a fan. No, I mean, he didn't want to be Gregory right in the jumps. So that's why he pitched to do Hurricane Helms originally. Almost like he, you know, a boxer or something. It wasn't the Hurricane initially wasn't a play on a superhero. It became that later once they realized it's great affection for comics and whatnot, and very knowledgeable about comics. But Hurricane Helms was just a way to avoid being called Gregory Helms because he really disliked the name Gregory.
Interesting. Did not know. So he becomes cruiserweight champion in the beginning of 06, and Teddy Long, holla holla, that instead of going one-on-one with The Undertaker or making tag team matches, instead, Helms has to wrestle every single week on SmackDown. He faces you at Great American Bash 2006.
A little spot for that kid.
he beats you at Great American Bash, but at No Mercy in October, you guys wrestle in North Carolina, and you actually end up winning this time. It's a rare Hardy win in North Carolina, but for two kids who came from North Carolina, this has to be a pretty special night for you guys.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina. Is that what your research says as well? I remember that very, very vividly, being in Raleigh, and it was so cool because there was a promotion, SCW, that had these bar shows that we would do in Raleigh, and we were just a couple miles away from that, and we're just reminiscing, like, look at how far we've come, from doing these bar shows, in the mid '90s. Now we're here wrestling on a big card on the biggest platform ever. Very, very cool for two local North Carolinians to get that opportunity to wrestle in North Carolina against one another. And on top of that, I won. So a great night. And as you said, it was a very rare night because having a Hardy winning in North Carolina is something that typically doesn't happen in the WWE.
No, it does not. But you did get to win instead of staring up the lights, which was nice for you. And Matt, you guys spent a lot of your youth traveling around North Carolina, you and Shane hitting the towns, making every single show that you can. And I bet you wish that you had Car Shield with you, because Car Shield makes it easy and affordable to protect your car from expensive repairs. And that is just for starters. Car Shield is the #1 auto protection company in the U.S. and offers protection plans for around $100 a month. The plans cover more parts than ever before, whether your car's got 5,000 miles on it or 150,000 miles on it. Let me tell you how simple it is to get your car fixed. When you need a repair, you choose the mechanic. And Car Shield's administrators handle all the rest. That's it. No paperwork, no headaches, nothing. You're taken care of. And if your car breaks down, you're stuck on the side of the road, and Hurricane hasn't gone through his life-changing experience yet where he can fly you to safety, well, plans through Car Shield also include coast-to-coast roadside assistance. Administrators are there for you with rental car options and trip reimbursement at no extra cost. And the beauty is, Matt, if you get your coverage today, you're going to lock in your price now, and it's never going to go up. I bet that when you were driving Shane Helms back to his house,
exactly what I was going to say. If I would have had Car Shield, I could have got that heater fixed. I could have got the air fixed. I wouldn't have had to stop and get those jackets at my dad's, and my dad would have said, "What the hell are you doing here?" and pointed to him underneath his nose.
And better yet,
I missed out on not having Car Shield.
With roadside assistance, he could have just called Car Shield, and they could have just came in and helped him get his keys out.
What's up with that? You're right.
Would have saved a whole lot of hassles, and the legend wouldn't have scared the hell out of Shane Helms. But we are telling you guys wholeheartedly and genuinely, Car Shield is going to protect your car as long as you own it. No matter how old it is, you are protected from the rising cost of parts and repairs for your vehicle. It helps me protect my wallet from expensive repairs, and they're going to do the same for you. Go to carshield.com/podcast to start your plan and lock in your pricing forever. That's carshield.com/podcast. A deductible may apply.
And I got to tell you, I felt very confident making the 4.5-hour drive to Savannah last night because I knew the Corvette was taken care of because I got Car Shield.
Good. And I heard the Corvette needed some work on it recently with a surround sound system, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, my screen was out a little bit, and they took care of it all.
Look at that. And you were able to pick your repairman. You were able to
easy
complete control over that.
They make it so easy. Car Shield makes it easy.
That's awesome. So yeah, man, that's a heck of a little notch you guys can put into your careers. You have that match in North Carolina, and that's something you guys are going to remember for a long time. But in 2007, he actually suffers a pretty significant neck injury with multiple broken vertebrae.
Yes.
That's some pretty scary stuff. Anytime you hear neck injuries in wrestling, how did he react to the setback? And what do you remember about that time period for him? He'd end up missing about 1.5 years of work.
I mean, obviously that's scary. Whenever you have extremely significant injury like he did, and it's your neck. I mean, that technology has come a long way over the years, but like you just don't know. I mean, I know he was concerned that this could be it. It could be the end of the road for him as far as his in-ring career goes. But fortunately he had the surgery and they did a great job with it, and he was able to make a full return.
He comes back in 2009, and now we're going back to the Hurricane, but we're putting a little spin on it. It's a Clark Kent style spin. He's going to be an interviewer as Gregory Helms, but then in the shadows, we start to see the Hurricane Helms. I love spins and gags like this. I think that's a really cool way to play into the comic book folklore. Was that pretty much what he was trying to own in on here?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I love that period too. He just excelled. He excels so much in taking on a role like that, especially with his long history and knowledge of comic books and whatnot. The way he would, play Gregory Helms, the ace reporter, and then become the Hurricane, and then like people would still like tie it together, like, "Oh, we're not dumb. We know this is you. You're just like taking off a pair of glasses," But he was so good at it, and he did so many entertaining vignettes during that period.
It's just so ridiculous. That's been my biggest problem I've had with Superman and not being able to buy Superman as a great superhero, because when he's Clark Kent, he's Superman with glasses. It's not very hard to figure out. And at least he had the foresight to make fun of that and to acknowledge that it's pretty fucking stupid. So I'm glad that he did.
Well, hell, John Alba, that damn Superman has the worst secret identity of all time. It's a Bradshaw quote for today. He didn't say that, but I said it in Bradshaw voice because I enjoy speaking in Bradshaw voice time to time.
When the Hurricane gets his hands on Gregory Helms, he will kill him.
When the Hurricane gets his damn hands on Gregory Helms, he will kill him.
Well, it's unfortunately not a run that lasts all that long. He's released in February of 2010, but he continued to work indies. He goes on to join Impact in 2015 as an agent and a worker, and he forms the Helms dynasty with Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee. And what a great kindred connection that is, to be overseeing Trevor Lee specifically with his father's Tracy's connections to Omega. Did you ever have any conversations about that with him, about mentoring Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. We both, all of us, I think, mentored Trevor. Like, Trevor got the best of everyone. Everybody that was there knew Trevor since he was a kid. As I said, like, I was literally there, like, right after he was born in the hospital. So everyone knew Trevor, everyone loved Trevor, and everyone really went out of their way to help Trevor as well. And I think it shows now how good he is so early in his career already.
Well, he's there for the formation of the broken character, and in total nonstop deletion, you and Jeff super kick him into the lake of reincarnation, where 3 Count is briefly reformed with Everett and Trevor Lee.
Yeah.
And then he gets kicked again, and he returns as the Hurricane. He's got the perfect sense of humor for this, I feel like. How down was he with all this, and who do you remember came up with the idea for that spot in total nonstop deletion?
I know I had the idea. I wanted him to go into the lake a couple times and revisit a couple of his different characters. And I thought the 3 Count thing would be really funny. And I think we probably talked about it together. But, the Lake of Reincarnation just became such a great gimmick there, where you can go in, you come out as another character, and people like bought into that, right? And it was like accepted. And like once you get something accepted and over in pro wrestling, then you can really utilize it to its max. So that was so much fun. And Shane has a great mind for these cinematic matches as well, just because he's very, comic book, very story oriented as well. And we love that, over the top stuff. Obviously it's very apparent that he does, with the way he played the Hurricane. So those things were so much fun. And like Broken Matt and the Hurricane, they were so much fun to play together.
Yeah. And he'd end up making his way back to WWE. He returns at the 2018 Rumble. You're in that Rumble as well. After he'd be furloughed, he would show up in the Elite Deletion match that you have in AEW. And then he's back.
I do got to tell you, John, after he showed up on AEW, when he was in that Elite Deletion, they automatically called him to come back. And I know he had spoke to them a little bit, but like that was the best move you could possibly do. Just getting booked on AEW is your best shot at getting hired back at WWE if they think you might be going there. So I know a couple of days after the Elite Deletion aired, they were back on the phone with him and they were getting ready to hire him back. So I'm glad all that worked out for him.
He let it play out and it worked out in his favor for him.
It did.
So, and if you would like to let it play out, boxofgimmicks.com, go ahead and search that Extreme Life of Matt Hardy store. You'll be able to pick up your Let It Play Out t-shirt, Matt Fact, Matt Fiction, the Spoken Matt Hardy, and the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy logo shirt as well. Put a t-shirt on your back.
Yours now.
You might show up on Matt Hardy's t-shirt post on Instagram.
You're right. On the t-shirt post, you might even, if you're wearing one of those shirts, I got to say I'm very biased. I like to post those on Fan Fridays whenever I post pictures of me and fans. So I promise you, if you wear a Extreme Life of Matt Hardy shirt, or Let It Play Out, Matt Fact, Matt Fiction, and we get a picture together and you post it and I get a hold of it, it will definitely be on Fan Friday.
So Matt, we got one more thing to do here on this podcast this week, and this was something that you really wanted to take a look at, and that is what you said was one of the cooler matches in Omega history. And why don't you set the stage for us here before I cue it up? What are we going to be watching and listening to here?
Yeah, and I do. I felt like this match, which I was the captain of my team. Shane was the captain for his team, and we're both very like-minded. We both, our careers and lives have a lot of parallels together. And I felt like this match of the Hardy Boys versus the Serial Thrillers, and it was our last Omega match before we went full-time with WWE, and we were on the road all the time. I felt like this is kind of like the essence of Omega. This is a great thing to show you, the people who are watching this, how these two guys, Matt Hardy and Shane Helms, met one another, became best friends, became kindred spirits, and how they were able to achieve all their wildest dreams because of working together and being able to lean on one another and all having the same goals, all wanting the same thing for everyone. And that was for people to succeed and make a career in pro wrestling. And one thing I want to cut back to and just mention this, there was a time we were in Manila, and this shows how much we have learned what we were doing, where I had this bit I would do as babyface Matt Hardy, where I would take my shirt off and I would tease to throw it this way. Then I would tease to throw it this way, tease behind me. And I would start doing the crowd like a symphony, like up, come down, up, down. And it was a bit that was so good. So we were working in Manila, and it was our first match there. And we were both exhausted at this point. I remember I'm doing this and the crowd is going ape shit in Manila, right? First time they'd seen WWE in so long. We were one of the earlier matches. Matt Hardy versus Gregory Helms. And I'm doing my whole shirt bit, and Shane goes to the referee and tells Nick Patrick, who's the ref at the time, says, just tell him I'm going to jump him before he can throw the shirt. We can just cut out the shine. We'll go straight to the heat, do the comeback, and just let him beat my ass. And Nick Patrick comes over and tells me and said, I was actually thinking that exact same thing, because we had the crowd at such a high during that. And that just shows how these guys who, probably overworked in the very beginning of their careers have learned how to maximize the crowd reactions. Because as soon as I'm doing that, the crowd is all in, everything. He shuts me down, boo, and we're automatically in the heat, and then we blow our load for the comeback and the finish. So once again, that shows the growth and the evolution of performers in Matt Hardy and Shane Helms. So you can go back and watch this match where the crowd was interactive and we did get to do things, but we bust our ass in these matches. All the matches we did in Omega, we bust our ass, we work so hard. But as you get older, you learn to work smarter as opposed to working harder. You always work hard, but you don't kill yourself as much. You work smart. And fortunately, we were all able to do that. We were all able to learn how to work smarter.
That match was October 22nd, 2006 in Manila that you were referring to.
Yeah.
And you guys tore down the house. And, Matt, you won that match too. You had Shane Helms' number.
Yeah. Well, he was saying this. There was one point where we worked together on a house show, and we had worked several times at this point, and someone had gotten there late. I don't know if it was me or him, and we were literally getting to go to the ring. I said, "Hey, you want to talk about this match?" He said, "Duck the Shining Wizard, Twist of Fate." I said, "Okay, see you out there." And we went and did filled in 15 or 18 minutes. That's how comfortable we were with each other.
That's
I said, you want to talk about anything? He said, Duck the Shining Wizard, Twist. Good. I said, good. See you out there, brother. So that was a lot of fun. So with all that being said, let's go back to the final Hardy Boys match in Omega. And it was the match where we dropped the Omega tag team titles to the Serial Thrillers, Shane Helms and his partner, Mike Maverick. And it was at East Wake High School, which was where Shane actually went to high school and wrestled. And it was one of our bigger shows. We had 1,000 people there, almost 1,000 people, right at 1,000. And the crowd was just so happy and so pumped and so excited for wrestling. And it's so funny because Jeff and I, we were like these baby faces on TV who'd like, worked their entire lives to like get a WWE contract and win. And we flipped the script on this night. We wanted to make these guys big baby faces. So Jeff and I kind of like, we did a promo earlier in the night where we came out and said, look guys, you better enjoy us while we're here. We just got hired. We're going to work for Vince McMahon because we don't give a shit about any of you now. We're not going to do any of these shitty local shows. Anytime you want to see us from here on out, we're going to be on TV and we're going to be megastars. So, we're leaving with the Omega Tag Team titles, and to hell with the Serial Thrillers. They're never going to be the champions. And that's kind of how we set up this match going into it, which was so different going back watching this because Matt and Jeff Hardy were always baby faces in Omega, in the big scheme of things. But on this night, we decided to be heels, and we really wanted to make the Serial Thrillers and have those guys continue to carry on the greatness that was Omega.
I'd argue, Matt Hardy, that sounds even just a little Young Bucks-ish of you guys to do. And look at those Young Bucks in the ring right there. Let's go audio up so we can hear the atmosphere.
That's it. Wonder where the Young Bucks got their ideas for their tights. With this crazy material.
Yeah, I wonder where that apparel sparked a note in their head there.
And it's great. You can see kind of on the hard cam side how this bleacher over here is pretty full of people. There was obviously ringside seats all around where it was full. Also, the bleachers on the other side were packed as well. And this was just a really very enthusiastic, excited crowd. And they were just so great to interact with. Even this, like Shane going out and getting in the crowd and doing their little silly Serial Thrillers dance and sitting down. Like, this is the best shit ever. Like, as a performer, you love being able to do stuff like this, especially like this is one of the reasons why I feel like house shows were so fun with WWE because it was a lot more laxed and you could like take your time, you could go slow, you could do a lot more fan interaction. When you're on television, every minute, every second is precious. So you have to maximize your time. You have to go. These events are so much fun where you can interact with the crowd and just have fun with them.
And this is what indie wrestling's all about, right?
Yeah, 100%.
These moments are what indie wrestling is all about.
Yep.
I'm going to ask some questions to you while we watch this match because it's a pretty lengthy match as well. But it looks like who's going to be starting us out here? Is it going to be Matt Hardy and Shane Helms?
I think so. It's going to be the captains of the team. It's going to be the ringleaders, the brains.
Man, the Young Bucks just absolutely jacked your style here, man.
Every single bit of it. They not only jacked our style, but also our hair colors, everything.
I'm going to go audio up here so you can hear them.
People were so mad too. Because we, like these people too said, hey, we've supported, these Hardy boys, and now they got a contract. Now they're going to turn their back on us. That's kind of the gig we were playing here. It was so much fun.
You guys look like brothers here. Long hair. How big would you say he was here?
How good was he?
How big was he?
As far as weight, he's probably 190 pounds.
Okay.
185, 190, I would guess. I know he worked really, really hard to put on size, and that was very, very tough for him because he was just a small, very slender guy. His stature, wasn't big, so he had to work extra hard to put on size.
This is January 29th, 1999, by the way, guys.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is we were still on WWE TV. We were going every week. We were still doing some house shows at this time too. But this is when they had informed us that they were going to stop our indie bookings. This was like the last run of indie bookings we were doing. And for Omega, we wanted to kind of be written off in the best way possible. And that was to drop the tag titles to the Serial Thrillers as they were still obviously going to be working Omega and indies.
Shane always had fundamentals super, super strong. I always thought he was a really good fundamental pro wrestler.
Very good. But he was an amateur wrestler too, so like that stuff is so beneficial. He was a good amateur wrestler as well. So he utilized a lot of that. He implemented that into his to his moveset and whatnot. And I still feel envious, like at Union Pines, where I went to high school, they didn't have amateur wrestling. I wanted to do amateur wrestling, but it wasn't available. And like whenever Jeff was a junior, they actually got it. That was right after I graduated. So Jeff got to do a little bit of it for 2 years, but I would have loved to have done amateur wrestling. I think it would have helped in the big scheme of things, and just helped you look a lot more legit and believable.
Let's answer some questions here while we watch this match.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Gladys asks, has Shane ever thought of creating a full comic series with the Hurricane? He could have Broken Matt as a sidekick.
I definitely know he has. And I think that would be something that would be very cool, especially if he could work out something like with WWE, as obviously, like there's some trademark issues there. But I think if the WWE would run some sort of Hurricane comic and let him have input and creative into it, and they did some nice sketches and some nice artwork, I think it could be something that could be successful. Because once again, as time goes on, these communities like comic books or pro wrestling, they become a little more niche. So there's definitely a big market out there for comic books. And I think comic books and wrestling have a huge crossover audience as well.
That heel Matt Hardy getting all the heat on Shane Helms here. Up and over.
These we loved, if we ever were being heels, we loved wearing these daisy tights more than anything else. Because like people were like, yeah, I can't believe you're wearing flowers on your tights. Like, what a bunch of pansies you are. I can't believe you're wearing flowers. That Thesz press is
oh my goodness, that spear.
Yeah, Shane just told me today that Thesz press is his favorite Thesz press of all time. The one that
looked awesome.
Punches. Yeah.
Let me go.
I will tell you the spot we had here where like the baby faces were going to shine out for 1 second. This is their little serial thrillers dance. So funny. Power bomb and then have the heels powder out, brother.
Let me go audio up here for a second so we can hear the crowd.
Yeah.
You think they're over? Holy jeez.
They were over. I know whenever he did that Thesz press, we did the deal where we'd worked with Edge and Christian a lot at this time as well, even on the road and house shows. And I suggested that Mike come in and spear Jeff and stuff because Jeff takes like this spear bump like amazing. And that's where that whole spot came from. Because we're going to do a spot where the baby faces were shining. We powdered out. Did you see that guy push me just then? I mean, literally pushed the shit out of me. Give me the heat.
You did a little Scott Hall, and then you did a little crotch chop. That was good there. That was good.
And I want to say this is around the time where they had pitched the idea of us being pledges for DX. And I think we probably incorporated some of that as well. I think that's why I did the suck it there.
Really?
Yeah, that was an angle that ended up being abandoned. There's a moment if you go back and watch WWE television where you'll see us coming to the ring and before our match, we're like putting up like the DX sign or whatever. And there was an idea that Brian Wirtz and a couple other guys had buzzed us about, that they were talking about making us like pledges for DX. And I don't know, what they eventually wanted to do with it, but it never came to be. They like just shut it down. We did it for like 5 or 6 weeks, and then they said, okay, stop doing that. We're not going to do that. We're not going in that direction anymore.
Now, Jeff in here working with Mike Maverick. What do you think of Mike Maverick?
A very good, solid guy. And like considering we didn't have like a ton of big guys, I thought he was what an amazing over-exaggeration that was, where he just like does a push-up and Jeff does a backflip. I thought it was one of those things. Watch how Jeff does his arms here. Oh, my God. Like the way he sold that was so great. Mike was very good, and we needed like bigger guys because we had so many guys that could like move and do all this acrobatic and athletic stuff. Him and Jason Arndt, which was Joy Abs, it was great to have them as kind of like bigger guys or heaters. So I really love that for Mike.
Love that tag team maneuver there. Gorilla press right onto Jeff.
Yeah, very, very smooth. And once again, just like working these guys, not only was it fun, it just felt like a night off because we just knew each other so well, and we all had this great level of trust where everybody was comfortable with everything the other person or other team was doing to them because we had such a great trust level. Those 3 leg drops, and then he'll do it. I'm sure he'll hit the serial thriller dance.
There it is.
Boom.
I mean, this is just before the era of Too Cool too. They got their finger on the pulse. They know what these crowds are going to pop for.
Yeah, no doubt. And once again, this is there was a point. You remember the what was it, Death Valley Driver message board? Mm-hmm. A very famous, iconic thing. There was one point where I know this match was like being thrown around, talked about like this is one of the greatest indie matches of the '90s or whatever. And what a great compliment that is, But like this match, it was definitely a standout, and I think it was also very intriguing and interesting too, because Jeff and I were always, pretty much career baby faces at this point, especially in Omega, the promotion that I'd started initially. So for us to like flip the script and be heel and then put these other guys for the tag titles, it just was a lot of fun, and it was a really unique and interesting match.
You know what I like about it too? Every time it seems like you guys are about to get some heat, they cut you off and they want to come back, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, there they go mimicking us. And what's so funny about this too? Shane had told me, we were talking about this match. He said at some point after we did that, where like we ended up laying on each other, like the 69 spot is a comedy spot, whatever. He said that someone threw a condom in the ring. He said, "Oh, maybe you should give those damn boys wearing those daisy pants this. Looks like you're gonna need it." He said, "Do you remember that?" I said, "No, I don't remember that." But he said someone threw a condom in the ring at some point.
Up and over, boom. And I don't know.
That's a very tricky dive to do too, especially when because if you don't get that height and your feet catch the ropes, you're gonna go ass over tea kettle.
I like that you guys were hugging on the outside, making up after that little embarrassing spot there. Let's get another question in here. Lopez asks if you could come in as one superhero similar to Helms did with Green Lantern, who would it be?
I would probably do Tony Stark Iron Man, and have it be a version of Big Money Matt to a degree.
I like that. I like that. Did you ever draw from Tony Stark for Big Money Matt?
I didn't. But Tony Stark became over with me huge after all the movies came out, and I even like kind of researched his character a little bit. I think this was actually the real heat. Because as you said, we did several teases that we're going to get the heat on these guys over and over again, and they keep coming out of it, turning it around as baby faces. No, I didn't, but I did become a big fan of Iron Man, and he would be someone that I would definitely, if I was going to go that direction, do a superhero gimmick and have the alter ego be Big Money Matt, I would definitely do my research and I would pull stuff from Tony Stark without a doubt.
RJ's got a couple questions here. He says, do you believe that Shane had the potential to have an Intercontinental Championship, U.S. or heavyweight title run?
Yeah, no, I think he did. And I think, his biggest battle, especially in the 90s, was just his size.
Yeah.
Being a smaller guy. But, now in 2022, size is nowhere as near as important as it used to be. Look at Jeff here. This spot monkey just flipping out, doing every flip in the book, jumping off every perch available.
He's amazing.
And I think he certainly could, especially in this day and age. Shane, if he was working and in his prime, I think he would definitely be a candidate to win a U.S. title or an Intercontinental title. I could see him holding those very easily. Michael
asks, Matt, what qualities do you think make Shane Helms valuable as a WWE producer?
I mean, first and foremost, like if you have been a wrestler and you have learned from the bottom up, I mean, that's your first tool that helps you so much, because that means you've worked at every level. You've worked like as an extra, you've worked as enhancement talent, you've worked in the middle of the card, you've worked on the top of the card, and that is very important as a producer when you're putting matches together, because like the first match on the show is definitely going to be different than the main event is, and I think that gives you a much better mindset and how to look at each one of these matches differently, and you definitely want the card to build throughout the show, much like a match builds throughout the match. So I think working in all those different spots, I think that really helps Shane's versatility out as a producer.
And that heat's still here on him.
Getting some heat, man. There's one point in here I know it's like we're doing a lot of things and we beat him up. And there is one point where I stop and put him in a sleeper and I have him turned around. And I do love that. I think there is such something to be said, especially when you have the crowd really invested into a match, to like grab a hold and try and work it. Don't be lazy with it, but then like let the crowd catch their breath and let them cheer and bring the babyface up while they're in that hold. I think it is an important part of a match. I'm so glad we utilized it in this match. I was proud of us for doing that, as opposed to just going spot.
No, your psychology here is honestly, I was going to bring it up. It's really strong, especially at that point where you guys are in the dojo and we've talked about on other episodes where you guys were really trying to learn how to incorporate psychology into more of your matches.
Yeah.
There are obviously spot-heavy moments of this match, but everything is sensical. Everything has made sense so far, and it's been fun.
100%. Yeah. I mean, once again, I look back at this match and I am extremely proud of it. And I'm proud this was, in the original Omega era, this was our last match. It was such a standout match.
Oh, man, Jeff doing that. That's so good.
And the jumping up and doing that, and he hugs, and right there we kiss.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very Young Bucks-ish. Just saying.
Very Young Bucks-ish, yeah. Wonder where they got their material from.
It's almost like we should do an episode on them. How about, I don't know, this month? How's that sound?
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's find out where they really got their material from.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I'm feeling particularly ambitious. So how about we do that episode next week?
Okay.
Okay.
Sold.
Young Bucks next week. Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. That's going to be a hell of an episode.
Next week, just while watching this match, we just came to this conclusion. We're calling it on the fly here, brother. Next week, Matt Hardy and the Bucks of Youth. Let's do a deep dive into the Bucks of Youth.
Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be real good. All right. So once again, Shane is doing all the selling here. Why do you have a guy like Shane doing the selling?
I mean, it just makes sense. Obviously, if the bigger guys outside, here's that hold I'm talking about, and we do get them down, and the crowd does get behind it, which is great. Shane is someone who is good at selling. He's the smaller guy, and we wanted to isolate him. And it makes the most sense in the psychology of the match to isolate him as opposed to the big man and bring the big man in and let him blow the comeback.
And now he reverses it on you. Let's hear the crowd, Matt.
Yeah. Oh. Look at this. We're going to get, Jeff almost came in. Messed it up, but we're doing a little fish out of water spot.
Able to get out of it. Big clothesline. Channeling your inner Bradshaw.
There we have it. There we have it. The clothesline from Hades.
Let's see here. Let's get a couple more questions in. We've got one from Bryant. When Shane was brought in as part of the Invasion storyline, did you or Jeff ask for him to be put with you guys as someone who could be part of Team Extreme?
We did talk about doing stuff with Shane and Shannon. They had found something that they wanted to do with Shane, and he ended up kind of doing his own thing. And fortunately, when it was all said and done, I ended up getting to work with Shannon some as we did the very well-known MFer, not what you would think Mattitude follower MFer. And that was so much fun doing that with Shane. Doing that with Shannon.
And we got from Adam, let's close out the questions with this. Is there any bit of you that wishes when Shane came in as part of the merger, they would have introduced him alongside you and Jeff as a repackaged version of 3 Count?
No, that means I would have to be dancing. And I am not a dancer. I don't particularly enjoy dancing. I don't like to dance. Even my wife, I feel like every time she's doing a TikTok video, she wants me to do some kind of like kooky dance. And I'm not a big dancer. Dancing is not something that I enjoy that much. So no, I would not want to be part of 3 Count.
All right, I'm going to go up for the hot tag here.
All right. Hanging off.
Look at that crowd.
Those big meaty clotheslines.
Look at that crowd. Oh my goodness, the air on that.
Yeah. Very simple too, just like clotheslines, body slams, and then we'll get into the real meat and potatoes of our comeback here.
Oh, ref bump.
There we go. We have a ref bump.
Adam also did want to know if you would have been in 3 Count, what would your names have been, yours and Jeff's?
Maybe mine would have been Magnificent Matty. And maybe Jeff's could have been, I was going to say Jazzy Jeff, but there's already a Jazzy Jeff.
There is a Jazzy Jeff.
Maybe he would have been Jingling Jeff, and he had some chains on.
Jukin' Jeff.
Jukin' Jeff. Yeah, there we go.
Omega.
Then Omega. We've got it won.
Oh, it's very rare that the heels get the phantom pin.
Yeah.
You don't see that too often in
Yeah.
matches.
That was the caveat for us putting them over, brother.
Oh, ref runs in 1, 2, kick out, and
Here's
oh,
here's a funny story too. This is one of my buddies I went to school with. His name's Aaron Decker, and he did a little bit of refereeing. He'd never taken a bump, and then he said he wanted to take a power bomb. So that was literally like the first one he had done, and we literally used him, to come in as that secondary ref and then just drop him.
it looked pretty good.
Yeah, no, not bad at all. He was kind of half-ass interested in doing wrestling at some point. He kind of started as referee.
Oh
No,
Matt,
no.
let's sit back here
What?
because we got to hear the crowd.
Yeah. Jeff goes out on his back right there on the floor, and this is the fallen star bomb. That's what they call this move. Man, yeah, listen to that. I mean, that's an excited crowd. Even Mike's celebration was really good.
That's awesome, man. Your new Omega Tag Team Champions, the Serial
Yeah.
Thrillers.
It was so much fun. What a fun match that was.
How cool is that?
And you were talking about the brotherhood that we had for like Omega, something that we did almost every single time. After we'd have a show, we always had someone there trying to roll footage with it with a camera, a VHS camera and whatnot. We would always go back to Tracy's. I mean, by the time we'd break down the ring and clean up the building, whatever we had to do to leave the venue, we would go back to Tracy's, and it would probably be 2:30 in the morning, and we would watch the show back. And we would do that almost every single time we had an Omega show. And then we'd end up getting it home like when the sun's rising.
And then it's bittersweet because that's your last one.
Yeah. It was bittersweet. But it also, too, was just what a brotherhood we had. Like, it was like a ritual. We would like do the show. We'd bust our ass. Everybody's tired and exhausted. But like most people would go back to Tracy's because Tracy was, the main guy who lived on his own and like had a little bit of a job and a career at that time outside of pro wrestling. And we would watch the show back, which would typically take 2 or 3 hours. And then, it'd be the sun's coming up and it's 6 a.m. in the morning. I said, okay, guys, we'll see you guys next weekend. Bye, later. But just what fun times, great memories.
I really enjoyed going back and talking about Gregory Shane Helms, the Hurricane, here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. He genuinely is one of my favorite cruiserweights and light heavyweights from that era. He is one of my absolute favorite characters in wrestling. And
yeah.
I think of my childhood too, seeing the Hurricane and really just eating it up. I ate up everything the Hurricane did. I thought it was so fun and so entertaining. And I definitely hit a few "What's up with that" on some of my friends over the years. So it was really special to go back and talk about him. Anything else you'd like to add about your friend here, Mr. Helms, your elder friend, Mr. Helms?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd mentioned it, but I'm 47, he's 48. So I want to speak about him respectfully. I want to respect my elders. But I'm so happy that he has had this run that he's had. He's someone who busted his ass and he defied a lot of the odds, to end up making it like he did. So he's just a great guy. He's got a great mind for the business, and we're both so passionate about pro wrestling. And just whenever you have someone that you're such close friends with and also shares that same passion as you, it's great to see them succeed. So I'm so happy he has found so much success and so much longevity in pro wrestling.
My gut tells me we'll see yet another Helms Hardy reunion at some point in the future.
Yeah.
When and where, I'm not sure, but my gut tells me we will. And when that happens, it'll be a good day for North Carolina wrestling brethren alike.
Indeed.
This was a good one, man. This was a good one. And that is Matt Fact, not Matt Fiction. Again, boxgimmicks.com. Go check out those shirts. We appreciate you guys tuning in this week. There were a few technical issues we had. So if Matt and I talked over each other or there was a little lag, we apologize for that. The internet in Savannah, Georgia, for as beautiful as Savannah, Georgia is, did not want to let it play out. Matt, we are talking about the Young Bucks next week. What can we expect when we dig into the Bucks of Youth?
I would imagine a lot of polarizing response because they are a very polarizing tag team. Two of the best human beings that I know in this industry. And I feel like we all get along famously just because we all seem half-assed normal to one another when there's so many people in this industry and this business that aren't normal. We actually are normal people and we can live normal lives outside of pro wrestling. So yeah, it's going to be fun though. They're two very talented and highly influential, considering they are, two of the pillars of AEW, and they started another company that was really needed in the industry at this time.
Starcast.com. Come hang out with Matt Hardy and I July 31st in Nashville, Tennessee at the world famous fairgrounds there. RicFlairsLastMatch.com. Pick up your tickets for that as well on Fight TV if you plan on streaming it at home. Enjoy the archive of the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy at ExtremeHardy.com. And how many stars are they leaving for us, Matt Hardy?
5 5-star review. Leave us some nice words if you dig the product. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that are just tuning in for the very first time on this episode, this podcast. And thank you very much for coming. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you will join us each and every single week.
Every single Friday, and then early access on adfreeshows.com. He is the woken, spoken, and broken one. I'm John Alba. The words have been spoken. We'll see you next week here on The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
Adios, amigos.